Level 1. Broke Rice Farmer. You're 19. Iga Province. In a couple decades, you'll command 53 invisible families and 400 operatives across 11 provinces without lifting a blade. Right now, a debt collector is breaking your left arm with a wooden bat on your father's storehouse floor. The second hit does something to your brain. You're watching yourself from the ceiling, thinking about whether your mother fed the chickens. That's the human mind for you. Somebody's destroying your body, and you're worried about poultry. Your father's paddy produced enough rice for 2 people this season. Your family has 4. And behind the collector's Makusu, neighbor's kid. Left 6 months ago, got recruited by a rival outfit out of Koka province. Running debt rackets across Iga villages is his first gig. New sandals, new crew. He picks a grain of rice off the drying rack. Holds it up. That's your whole yield, isn't it? They laugh. The grain falls in the dirt. May stops it. Your girl. Walks in. Tells them she'll go. Cover the debt with labor. Makusu looks her up and down. She could be put to better use than carrying sacks. The lead collector laughs. Makusu nods. That nod will matter in about 6 years. The girl who used to fall asleep on your shoulder walks out the door between 2 men she's never met. She doesn't look back. There's nothing to ask a kid on a dirt floor with a broken arm. They leave. You crawl into the root cellar. 40 minutes in the dark, perfectly still. Something in you is already built for this. The waiting, the silence, treating a dead space like a job. Then someone drops from the beams above you. A man has been living in the beams above your head. Weeks, maybe months. Eating your family's rice, the rice you literally don't have enough of. He watched the whole thing from up there. Doesn't care about the debt, doesn't care about your arm. He looks guilty about one thing. The rice. I owe you, he says. For the rice, mostly. His name is Jiro. He offers a job that pays in silver. You don't ask why a man living in your rafters has silver jobs to give. But where did they take May? That's the question that will ruin everything. Level 2. Supa. The saboteur. You take the masu from the storehouse shelf, your father's bamboo rice cup, fill it with the last of the harvest for your mother, and follow Jiro out of the village at 3 a.m. Jiro leads you 3 days into the Iga Mountains. The camp is 6 men living under rock overhangs and stolen tarps. First assignment. Burn a tax granary holding 200 sacks of rice. Your family's failed harvest was 2. May was taken over 2. You do the math while carrying pine pitch through a forest at 2 a.m. You set the fire from the northeast corner, because wind travels southwest this time of year. You know wind patterns, the way you know irrigation channels from standing in fields and paying attention to things that move without permission? The masu in your pack measures the pitch. It's already stopped being a farming tool. Nobody in this line of work says the word ninja. You're a sapa, a saboteur. It's ninja with better branding. Jiro teaches tracking. Disturbed moss recovers in 6 hours in shade, 3 in sun. A campfire 12 hours cold still holds warmth 4 inches below the ash. You track a bandit courier for 9 days. Lose the trail at a river crossing. Find a sandal print in clay 14 hours later, 8 hours old, based on moisture in the impression. Rice farming taught you to read soil the way merchants read ledgers, by what's missing, not what's there. You find the courier. Jiro handles the rest. You don't ask what the rest means. Jiro takes you to a meeting at the mountain's base. A man in a monk's robe who isn't a monk. Monks don't have calluses on their knife hand and informants in 3 provinces. His name is Saburo. He reads your tracking report. 14 pages. Looks at Jiro. The rice farmer? Jiro nods. He slides a short blade across the table. Folded steel wrapped in black cord. Supa don't carry these, he says. Genin do. You pick up the blade. It weighs less than the masu. It will cost more than everything your father's paddy ever produced. Level 3. Genin, the infiltrator. Supa, burn things down. Genin, break into the things that haven't burned yet. Same skill set, higher ceilings. Literally. Saburo operates out of a sake brewery in Ueno that produces terrible sake and excellent intelligence. First assignment. A provincial magistrate's compound in Omi. 14-foot walls, 2 guard rotations, 4-hour shifts. Inside, troop deployment orders for a lord planning to annex 2 territories. Your job. Enter. Copy the document. Leave without anyone knowing a wall was climbed. Saburo teaches the tools. Shuko iron hand claws for stone. Ashiko foot spikes for timber. Lockpicking with temple bell wire picks. Most people's hands shake at the 3rd tumbler, he says. Yours don't. You think about the root cellar. 40 minutes with a broken arm. Something broke a long time ago. You just found the profession that pays for the damage. You're officially a ninja, not the kind with throwing stars and backflips that's theater. The real kind picks locks with bell wire and writes reports about it. The Omi compound, 2:30 a.m. New moon, over the north wall where the mortar is oldest. Past the east watchtower guard during the 90-second gap between his circuit and the relief. The lock takes 34 seconds. Document copied onto rice paper, thin enough for a garment seam. Out in 11 minutes. Guards change at 3 a.m. You're 400 yards into the forest by 2:58. 6 weeks later, the regional lord marches his troops into a position anticipated before he gave the order. You're 11 minutes inside a building redirected 3,000 soldiers. You didn't pull a sword, you pulled a thread. In rooms you'll never enter, Saburo has started mentioning a genin from Iga who writes infiltration reports like architecture blueprints. In those rooms, that's how networks begin to notice the people who'll eventually command them. Next assignment changes everything. A tax official in ICE selling village locations to bandits. 47 people dead in 6 months. Saburo hands you a vial, 3 drops in his evening sake. You serve it yourself, dressed as a tavern boy. He thanks you for the pour, dead by the time you reach the kitchen. You walk back through a rice field and throw up in a ditch for 10 minutes. First kill. Your body rejects it the way it rejects bad water. Every kill after that, your body just files it. That's the part nobody warns you about. Not that killing is hard, that it stops being hard. The job after that goes wrong. Yamato Province. Interior layout doesn't match Saburo's map. A kitchen boy wakes, maybe 16. Your hand goes to the blade. You press nightshade tincture over his face instead, 4 seconds of struggle, then sleep. Saburo says, the map was wrong. That's his failure. That's your decision. In this work, his failures are forgivable. Yours may not be. Inside the fortress, a mark scratched into the wall, a triangle inside a circle. Makusu's childhood carving. The new sandals, the unexplained absence, the nod to the debt collectors he was recruited by the Coca network 6 months before Jiro found you. Someone from his side was here first. The document's already been copied. You're not the only one climbing walls. You're second. You file that name somewhere deeper than memory. Somewhere that keeps a ledger. Saburo slides a monk's robe across the table. This one requires a face, not a shadow. Prayer beads, travel papers, a pilgrimage cover. Genin climb walls, he says. Kancho walk through doors. You put on the robe. It fits. That's the test. The masu in your pack measured nightshade for the kitchen boy's cloth. A rice cup measuring poison. The career progression is in the contents, not the container. Level 4. Kancho, the disguised agent. Genin climb 14-foot walls in the dark. Kancho walk through the front door in broad daylight and get offered tea. Same intelligence, better knees. You arrive in Mikawa as Brother Ren, a wandering monk collecting donations for a temple reconstruction that doesn't exist. The castle town of Yoshida has 4,000 residents, a garrison of 600, and a warlord spending money he shouldn't have on soldiers he shouldn't need. Your job: pray, beg for alms, and map every military asset in the province. Timeline: 3 months. The only weapon you carry is a prayer bell. It opens more doors than a blade. Monks are invisible. People confess to monks the way they confess to barbers, because you're close, quiet, and they assume you'll forget. A garrison officer's wife mentions 40 Portuguese muskets arriving at the castle. A sake merchant mentions a troop corridor through the southern mountains. You write nothing down. Memorize everything. The masu sits in your begging bowl. Villagers drop coins into it. A rice cup collecting intelligence fees. Nobody finds this funny except you, and you can't tell anyone why. Week 6. A side contract. Garrison officer selling troop positions to rival lords. Saburo's instructions. Quiet, no trail to the temple. The officer comes for a private prayer session. Wants to confess his sins. You listen. Asks for spiritual guidance. You pour him tea with 4 drops of nightshade and tell him the Buddha forgives everything. He dies kneeling. A ninja in monk's robes absolving a man permanently. You report it as a heart attack during meditation. Nobody questions a man dying mid-prayer. It's considered a good death. A traveling actress named Hana sees through the fake monk in 4 days. You hold prayer beads like a man holds a tool. Monks hold them like they're holding a conversation. She doesn't report you. She teaches you to inhabit a role from the shoulders down. 3 nights. On the 4th, she's gone with the troop. She left a folding fan on your sleeping mat, not sentiment, reference material. You don't follow. The last girl you followed out a door never came back. You dictate a 22-page intelligence report from memory. The courier asks how you remember all this. You think about irrigation schedules, soil conditions across 40 paddies, monsoon timing. You tell him you used to grow rice. He waits for the rest. There isn't one. The report reaches a rival warlord who repositions forces 6 weeks before the invasion. 3 months of begging unmade a military campaign. And in the same town, a merchant from Omi who arrived 4 months before you, new shop, new wife, established fast. You recognize the pattern because it's your pattern. Makusu is already a kancho, working the same town for Koka. 2 agents gathering intelligence 100 feet from each other. Neither makes the other. Saburo calls you back. The network needs a permanent presence. Not 3 months. Years. Someone who becomes the town. He pauses. You're good at becoming things. You think about the monk, the rice farmer, the saboteur. None of them were you. All of them were convincing. That's either a talent or a diagnosis, and the next assignment won't care which. Level 5. Kusa, the sleeper operative. Kancho wear a disguise for 3 months. Kusa become an entire human being for years. It's method acting where breaking character gets you buried in a rice field. Suruga Province, a port town called Shimizu. Your legend, Kenji, a paper merchant. You arrive with forged guild papers, 3 bolts of paper as seed inventory, and the masu wrapped in cloth at the bottom of a travel chest. The assignment, embed permanently, build a real business. Marry if possible, map harbor defenses. Timeline, indefinite. When the signal comes, Saburo says, you act. Until then, you are Kenji, not pretending, being. A ninja who sells paper for a living. The universe has a sense of humor. The shop turns a profit in 8 months. You learn the harbor. 14 mooring points, 3 deep water berths, a garrison of 200 rotating every 6 weeks. You test response time by starting a controlled fire at a dockside warehouse. 9 minutes from smoke to first soldier. Year 2. You marry Fumiko, a widow who runs the dye workshop next door. Her 6-year-old son Taro thinks paper is boring, and says so with the honesty of someone who hasn't learned truth has a price. The marriage is part of the cover. The problem is you like waking up next to someone who smells like indigo dye. The problem is Taro starts calling you father after 6 months, and you don't correct him. The problem is the line between legend and life was supposed to be a wall, and you've turned it into a door. Makusu arrives in Shimizu, year 2, silk trader from Omi, also embedded, also married, also waiting. A dead drop report fills in the rest. Makusu didn't just walk in with the collectors he sent them. The debt was manufactured. Your father owed nothing. May was the target from the beginning. 2 sleeper agents buying fish at the same market stall, haggling mackerel prices while mapping the same harbor for competing clients. He doesn't know you know. You buy him a fish? You go home to Fumiko that night. She asks why you're quiet. You can't explain that the man you bought fish from today stole the first girl you loved, and the woman asking you about it is the second one you'll eventually leave. You file this beside every other thing Makusu owes. The interest is compounding. He just doesn't know the rate. Year 3. Taro catches a sea bream and holds it up like he's conquered an empire. You estimate cannon placement on the eastern battery while baiting his hook. The masu sits on the shop shelf. Fumiko uses it to measure dye powder. The most dangerous object in the shop, disguised as the most ordinary. Year 4. The signal. Chalk mark on the shrine gate 2 vertical lines. Forge orders redirecting the garrison inland. Disable the eastern battery. Open the harbor for 6 hours. You sit at the dinner table. Fumiko serves rice. Taro talks about a turtle he found at the harbor. You pass the rice using the masu. Tomorrow the paper merchant disappears. Fumiko doesn't know it's a legend. Taro doesn't know father is a word someone assigned to a mission briefing. The masu has held rice, pitch, poison, coins, dye powder. Tomorrow it holds the weight of everything you're about to betray. Level 6. Chunin. The syndicate handler. You graduated from doing the dangerous work to telling other people to do the dangerous work. In any other profession, they call that management. Here they call it surviving long enough to delegate. The harbor operation works. Garrison marches inland chasing a forged emergency. 6 hours of open harbor. 4 years of paper selling bought a bloodless victory. You leave Shimizu at dawn. Fumiko finds a note saying Kenji had a trade emergency in Kyoto. It doesn't say goodbye to Taro. Some words are too heavy for paper, even for a paper merchant. Saburo meets you in Iga. The network wants you managing operations, not running them. You've been promoted from field to desk. In most professions, that means less danger. In this one, it means you're responsible for the danger other people walk into. 4 field cells, 3 provinces, 14 ninjas who'd stab you for using that word. You allocate resources from a warehouse disguised as a medicine trader's. Black powder in jars labeled headache remedy. Nightshade, alongside real herbal medicines. The dosage difference between healing a fever and stopping a heart is 3 drops. You keep the chart in your head. A genin named Roku fails an infiltration in Owari. Spotted on a wall. Kills a guard. You have 6 hours before the garrison connects the dead guard to intelligence activity. Extract him through a fishing village. Burn his legend. Relocate the dead drop. 14 decisions in 6 hours. None involve a weapon. All determine whether people live or die. You cross-reference intelligence from all 4 cells. A warlord in Mino consolidating power. 3 strategic options. You choose the one nobody taught you. Position the network as indispensable to whoever wins. The rice farmer's son is doing geopolitics from a medicine warehouse. Saburo stops answering. Dead drop untouched for 2 cycles. The man who turned a rice farmer into a weapon is a silence in a dead drop now, and the profession doesn't allow funerals. Nobody promoted you. The position opened the way positions open in this profession. Someone above you stopped existing, and gravity did the rest. A routine field report from Shimizu mentions the paper merchant's wife remarried. A fisherman. The boy asks traveling merchants if they've seen a man named Kenji. He describes you wrong. Taller, older, kinder. The version of you he needed, not the one that left. Reports cross your desk about a rival handler efficient, aggressive, arriving at targets 2 days before yours. Makusu has been promoted too. The grain of rice is now a strategic rivalry measured in territory. Then a message through 3 intermediaries. The Iga Council, 53 families that govern the region's shadow networks, wants a representative. The seat holder died. You don't ask how. What this means is, the table where decisions are made has an empty chair, and the chair is being offered to someone who started in a root cellar. Level 7. Jonin. The network broker. Chunin manage the people who climb walls. Jonin manage the people who manage the people who climb walls. It's middle management with a body count. The council seat puts you at the table. But the table is only the beginning. The rival warlord in Mino wins. Your intelligence positioning pays exclusive contracts across 4 provinces. You stop managing cells and start managing the people who manage cells. Contracts arrive in euphemisms. The garden in Ekizen needs pruning, means a provincial official needs to disappear. The harvest timing in Owari requires consultation, means troop movements mapped. You negotiate in a language that never says what it means. Everyone at the table understands every word. The kid from the rice paddy broker's ninja contracts over tea. The tea is excellent. The conversation would get everyone in the room executed. The Ekizen pruning. Provincial governor skimming coalition funds. Has to look natural. You send an operative posing as a masseuse, heated stones, cedar oil, and a needle dipped in blowfish toxin slipped between the vertebrae. Governor dies mid-session. Coroner says stroke. The lord who ordered it pays in black powder. A man's life converted to gunpowder. Revenue flows through 3 legitimate businesses: a sake brewery, a shipping concern, and a paper trading company. The paper company is yours. 15% on intelligence, 20% on eliminations, 10% on logistics. The Masu holds ink on the ledger table, your father's rice cup recording assassination payments. A client requests the elimination of a Buddhist abbot running an orphanage 40 children who also finances a rebel coalition. You refuse, not because of the children, though the children are the reason you tell yourself, because an abbot's death in an orphanage burns networks. You check on the orphanage 3 months later. The abbot is alive. The children are fed. The fact that you checked is the point. The margin still exists. You use the network to trace May. 3 months of quiet inquiries across 6 provinces. One lead a shipping ledger from Nagasaki, Portuguese traders, names converted to inventory numbers. The trail ends at a harbor. You stand at the edge of what your network can reach, and it's not far enough. Word comes through intermediaries. Makusu says the rice farmer's network is better positioned, for now. First direct acknowledgement in 10 years. Those last 2 words are not a concession, they're a countdown. He's been counting to his next move. You've been counting to his last one. The 53 families want you on the inner council, the 9 seats that actually control the network. They want someone who understands field operations, finances, and political brokerage. You're being offered a key. The Masu goes with you. Level 8. Domyochu. The clan council representative. Jonin broker contracts. Domyochu decide which contracts get to exist. You went from negotiating at the table to owning the table. Different chair, different universe. The room has no windows. The table is circular, no head position. 9 representatives, 53 families, 400 operatives across 11 provinces. The Poison Archive sits at the center, 200 years of accumulated knowledge on how to end things quietly. The chest opens only by unanimous vote. You're one of the 9 keys. A conflict in Omi threatens network territory. 2 warlords, 12,000 troops. You recommend letting them exhaust each other. 8 months later, the weakened victor sends an envoy requesting security consultation. You gain 2 provinces without deploying a single operative. The Poison Archive requires updating a paralytic compound from Kyushu that induces 4 hours of immobility without killing. The Masu measures base solutions on the laboratory bench. A chemical autobiography written in bamboo residue. A trafficking manifest surfaces from Makusu's early operations. Names, dates, shipping routes, Portuguese traders, Nagasaki port, overseas. May's name on page 3. Sold before Makusu ever climbed his first wall. She was the capital that funded his career. You read it twice. Fold the paper. File it with everything else in the archive. There's nowhere to send a rescue. There's no one to rescue. The girl who walked out of the storehouse to save your life is a line item in someone else's ledger. Then, the vote that changes everything. One of the 53 families defects, selling operational details to a warlord. Emergency session. 8-1 to sanction. Not the traitor, the family. 14 people, including children. You vote yes. You don't hesitate. 3 days. The family ceases to exist. You authorize the death of 14 people with a raised hand in a quiet room. No weapon, no wall, just a hand. You think about Taro, not the 14. Taro. Intelligence reaches the council. 5 warlords forming an alliance to destroy the Iga networks. Not conquer, destroy. 30,000 troops. 18-month timeline. The 53 families face extinction. The council votes for unified command. 1 person. Full authority. All families, all operatives, all resources, every compound in the archive. The vote is 7-2. The person is you. Makusu sits on the Koka Council. His assessment reaches you through intermediaries. The rice farmer thinks in seasons. They need someone who thinks in seconds. He's wrong about the seasons. Slowly is how you've survived every person who thought fast. You accept with the Masu on the table. Same cup. The table is different. Everything the cup sits on has changed. Level 9. Sokoku Shacho, the syndicate overlord. Domyochu share power with 8 other people at a round table. Sokoku Shacho is the round table. You stopped asking for permission and became the person who grants it. You consolidate 53 families in 90 days. Standardize protocols. Unify the Poison Archive. 340 compounds. Centralize intelligence from 11 provinces through a single node. You. 30,000 samurai against 400 ninjas. The math is impossible by any conventional calculation. You don't fight conventional wars. You fight the spaces between them. Supply lines, alliances, information. You fight the way water fights stone, not by force. By finding every crack. You don't fight the coalition, you dissolve it. 5 warlords means 5 sets of ambitions, 5 sets of jealousies, 5 sets of secrets. You deploy 12 Kusa operatives. They don't sabotage, they whisper. Forged letters, planted evidence, doctored financial records. None true, all plausible. Plausibility is the only weapon that works against alliances, because trust can't survive evidence, even fake evidence. Month 6. 2 lords withdraw. A third redirects 4,000 troops to his own border. 30,000 became 18,000 without a blade drawn. By month 10, the coalition exists on paper. No army marches on Iga. You won a war that never happened, using weapons that don't exist in any arsenal. Makusu's Koka network collapses with the coalition. His 40 families fracture into factions. A provincial lord captures him and offers him to the highest bidder. The highest bidder is you. You send one operative with 1 grain of rice and a name written on paper. May. Place both in front of Makusu before the exchange. You don't execute him. Execution is what he expects. You offer him a position deputy handler, Omi province, reporting through 2 layers to you. The boy who nodded at the debt collectors, who sold a girl to fund his first operation, now works for the man she walked out the door to save. Every report he files crosses your desk. Every morning he wakes up, employed by the answer to what he did. The humiliation is structural, and it's permanent. You're 42. You pass through the village. The paddies are still there. A young farmer, maybe 19, is bent over in the mud, measuring water levels with a bamboo cup. His hands are steady, the specific kind of steady. An old man watches from the tree line. You recognize the posture. You recognize the patience. You keep walking. The masu is in your pack. It's held rice, pine pitch, nightshade, coins, dye powder, black powder, ink, and the weight of 53 families. It never held May. That's the one measurement it couldn't make. Same instrument, same measurements, different math entirely. Somewhere in that paddy, a boy with steady hands is wondering if this is all there is. Somewhere at the tree line, an old man is deciding whether to sharpen the blade or break it. The steadiness is the hook, the steadiness is the trap, and the job offer is already decided. The story you just heard is fiction, but the ninja networks of Iga and Koka were real. The 53 families were real. The shadow wars that shaped Japan's warring states era were real. And somewhere, in every era, a kid with steady hands and an empty cup is about to get noticed by someone who doesn't farm rice. If this one stayed with you, leave a thought below. Subscribe for more.